Hello, and welcome back to the DayLuna Human Design Podcast with your host, Dana and Shayna. This is a solo duo episode for all of our human design nerds. We want to go deeper into layers of human design that we get a lot of questions around. So, this episode is all about having hanging gates in your chart in an undefined center. And the reason we wanted to address this is because it is kind of a confusing topic that we get a lot of questions on, and it's challenging to find really good information about it online if you're researching. So we wanted to dedicate this episode to that topic and to really talk about what does it mean to have a defined gate, even if it's coming from an undefined center.
Yeah, and learning about your gates and channels and your centers that are defined or undefined in human design can be life changing. And also, it's like, how do I work with this? How can I really apply this? And understanding the difference between a defined center or gate or an undefined center or gate is really important. So, when you look up your chart, just from the start, everyone, if you don't know your chart, look it up. You can find it for free on our website, daylunalife.com, and it's going to have the most info on that chart that we offered you guys for free on there. But what you're going to be looking for are the centers. So these are like the triangles and the squares and a diamond that are either colored in, that means that it's defined, or it's white, which means that it's undefined. And then you're going to see all these numbers coming off of those shapes, those centers. And some of them are colored in and they reach all the way down to another center that is colored in. And some of them just have a number that has a line that's colored in, but it's not actually connecting all the way to a center. So that would be a hanging gate. A hanging gate is a gate that's coming off of any center that doesn't connect fully to another gate to connect to that other center. So when you're listening to this podcast, we recommend following along, looking at your chart and seeing where you might have defined centers with hanging gates or undefined centers, white centers, with still a colored in line for a gate that's hanging off of that undefined center.
Yeah, and all of your gates are these energetic qualities that are inherent to you. They are a part of your design that has been imprinted into who you are. And so these gates are all characteristics or qualities that you are here to embody consistently throughout this lifetime, right? And you have all of these different gates and channels, and the totality of them is what makes your unique flavor. So looking into your gates in human design is definitely the next level. A lot of people start with your energy type and then even getting into your centers and then going into your gates. Your gates are really, I think, where the magic happens because it shows us how unique we are. Not only do we have our unique set of gates that really tells a story when you put them together about your uniqueness and like your unique frequency, we also have even the line expression coming from that gate. So this is where human design gets really deep. But today we really want to do focus on what does it mean specifically to have a gate from that undefined center? So, in order to understand that, you sort of have to go back to the basics of what does it really mean to have a defined center, which is a colored in shape or energy center in your body, versus an undefined center or an open center, which is a white shape or energy center in your body. So, some people say that undefined centers, it's like that's the area of your life where you are the student. And then your defined centers, that's the area of the life where you are the teacher. And we really like to say instead that the undefined centers are the places where you are like the receiver. You're picking up and taking in other people's energy into your own body. You're receiving through the undefined centers, and then you are transmitting through the defined centers. That's where you are putting out your unique frequency for other receptors to pick up. So, in that way, we can see that all of us are really designed to interplay with one another. When you are with someone physically, your electromagnetic field or aura is exchanging and communicating with other people through your aura, through your undefined or defined centers. So when you're together, you're giving something and they're taking something, and vice versa through these centers. It's a really beautiful interplay. But it's really important to kind of understand what percentage of receivers do you have, aka undefined centers, versus what percentage of transmitters do you have in your body, aka defined centers. And almost everyone will have at least one undefined center. But some people, of course, could have every center defined, and almost everyone has at least, two defined centers unless you're a reflector. So most of us, mostly we do have kind of this mix of being a transmitter or a receiver. So first of all, just knowing out of the 9 centers, I have 7 defined and 2 undefined. That's something that is really kind of helpful to know first and foremost, because you'll see what percentage of empathy you have versus what percentage of staying true to your own energy and transmitting out your consistent energy to other people.
Yeah, and this is why when you hear information about reflectors, you might initially feel like, I resonate with that. I feel like I'm a chameleon. I feel like I reflect people back. I feel like I'm really empathetic. And a lot of people, when they first hear about human design, they're like, well, I feel like a reflector, even though I'm a man gen or a manifester or projector or generator, whatever your type is. And that's because we all have a different, varying amount of empathy in specific ways and consistency in specific ways. So, with your undefined centers that are white, like Dana said, you're empathetically taking in other people, and then you can amplify that energy that you're feeling, but it's inconsistent, right? So, depends on who you're around, depends on the people or the transits or the things that you're connecting with, that moment you are taking in and empathetically feeling, and then you can amplify it. And because it's inconsistent, you can't rely on that energy every single day to show up with that in the same way every single day, which is what we try to do when we don't have this awareness. We feel someone else, and when we're around them, we feel so good. And then we're like, we have to bring that to our work. We have to bring that to our family. We have to show up that way every single day. And it becomes this struggle because it's not really consistent for us or accessible to us all the time. Now, the centers that are colored in are consistent. So when we're talking about being a receiver or a transmitter, I just wanted to clarify, you're receiving through your undefined centers, but then amplifying those, and your defined centers are always transmitting. So it's not like you're receiving through your undefined centers and then taking that and then transmitting that energy through your defined centers. If you're new to human design, it might have sounded like that, but what you're doing is you're empathetically feeling and receiving through those undefined centers, and your defined centers are always consistent for you. They are always putting out the same consistent energy. And so that's what other people are picking up on if they have that center undefined. So we like to say also, this can be helpful, but the undefined centers are where we are this wise observer or discerner. It's where we have that empathy. And the defined centers that we have are where we are the way shower of our way to other people. So we are meant to be this mix of empathy and way showing, of feeling others and being consistent in how we show up. And we are meant to feel other people and be felt by other people. And we trip up when we try to be like others and try to take on their energy and wear it every single day, or when we try to keep ourselves from being felt by others with our defined centers. And this is where we hear the messaging so much of, I don't want to be too much. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to, take up too much space, because it feels uncomfortable to be felt by other people. But we are meant to. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we alchemize as a humanity, as a species. Is literally feeling each other and then giving off our unique frequency to those around us as well.
Yeah, so just to give you an example of like a defined and undefined center being a receiver or a transmitter, let's talk about the Ajna center, which is part of the mind, right? It will be the second center up from the top in the head in the body graph. So if you're looking at your Ajna and it's colored in, that means you have a defined Ajna. You have a defined mind, if you will. And your perspective is designed to be consistent. Your answers, the way that you see the world, it's designed to be consistent, and you are only really accessing that center from your own perspective. And over time, you're here to hone your perspective, you're here to hone your worldview, and you're here to transmit that out into the world and to give that frequency of your unique perspective and mind out into the world. Now, if you have an undefined ajna and it's white, depending on who you're around, you're going to be taking in that energy from other people and experiencing their thoughts and answers and perspective. in your own mind. So that's the trippy thing about empathy. It's not just seeing it or noticing that energy is there, it's taking that energy in and experiencing it in your own being as your own thoughts, right? It's like that empathy is really, it's something really powerful to understand that we are processing other people's energy in our own body, right? It really takes it to a deeper level. So if you have this undefined ajna, you're here to be this discerner and observer of other people's thoughts. When you take in someone else's perspective and you're seeing the world through their perspective in your own mind, then it's up to you to notice that and to discern and gauge, is this thought or perspective healthy and helpful in this moment or not? So that's your empowerment. You're trying on for size different people's minds and perspectives through your undefined ajna. And then you become really wise because you've been able to see other people's perspectives. You've been able to see so many varying perspectives. You can really get this wisdom of which perspectives and answers and ways of looking at the world are healthy or helpful in this circumstance with this group of people. The tricky thing is to allow that fluidity and to observe or discern in the present moment and not say this idea is good forever or this idea is helpful forever. It's really important to embrace fluidity because you are designed to be inconsistent and picking up on other things. So it's really cool to see how neither one is better or worse, a defined center or an undefined center. I think in a lot of really traditional human design languaging and writing, they do kind of frame it as a defined center is better, if you will, and an undefined center is harder or more challenging and you're going to be in your not self more. We really don't see that. We see them both as equal opportunities to be amazing. They're just completely different ways of processing the world. And for both of them, we feel like you can be in your highest expression or lowest expression. If you have an undefined center, there's you can find a lot of information around the not self of that undefined center. For example, the not self of the undefined ajna is feeling like you need to be certain and sure all the time and feeling really insecure that your mind is always fluid and inconsistent and shape shifting depending on who you're around. You can feel like you need to hold on to one opinion or one perspective and grip onto that forever. And that's the not self, right? Trying to pretend that you're certain, feeling insecure around that. But traditional human design doesn't talk as much about the not self or the lowest expression of having a defined ajna, but it is definitely there as well. That would be really, once again, kind of like forcing your opinions on other people and wanting other people to see things your way. It's also pressuring yourself to find answers more quickly and pressuring yourself to make it all make sense instead of allowing the natural unfolding. Also, if you have a defined ajna, the not self can be trying to live your life with your mind running the show instead of your authority. Because you do have this consistent access to your mind, it makes it almost easier to try to rationalize things and live from that place and override your authority. So I just wanted to give these examples because first understanding the difference between an undefined and defined center is really crucial if we want to understand how do our defined hanging gates play a role in whether the center is defined or undefined.
Yes, and this is a great example because you can see how if you're somebody who has a defined mind, you are not seeing other people's perspectives, but maybe you have an undefined emotional center. And so you are sensing other people's emotions. And you can feel like, well, I feel other people's perspectives. I am sensitive to other people. I'm empathetic, but really you're taking in other people's emotions and you're feeling what they're emotionally feeling. And you're still able to hold space for people. You're still able to learn from people, but you're learning from them in a different way that is then helping you hone your unique perspective. So, a lot of times, without human design, we have these blanket statements that are helpful, like, they're really open hearted, they're really open minded, they're really empathetic, they're highly sensitive person. But it's not specific enough to really empower us to do something with it. And that's what I love about human design is that it really gets so specific in exactly how you are empathetic and exactly how you are way showing and conditioning other people. And you don't need to try to be seeing everybody else's perspectives if you have a defined mind. you need to be feeling other people in the other ways that you are open and empathetic, because people are needing you to be that thought leader with that defined ajna, right? So that's once again an example of how you can try to bend yourself to fit in and be like other people that maybe you see, without having awareness of your consistent gifts. So if you want to learn more about the undefined centers and the not self themes there, we have a great resource on our website, for free, actually, on daylunalife.com under the free human design tools. We have a not self cheat sheet. We also have a center clearing meditation, which is amazing to help you come back to your own frequency and empty out and decondition. It's a huge practice that we recommend everyone to do. It's not that long. You can do it, once a week or every day, however you're feeling that you need help right now, or support, I should say. And also, our book, Your Human Design, is a great place to learn about each center and what the not self theme is for it being defined or undefined, and how you can really work with it to come into the highest expression.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so now let's get into the gates on these defined or undefined centers. So if you have a defined gate on a defined center, then the fact that that center is defined, you have consistent access to that entire center, including those gates that are there. You're going to feel those gates constantly in the way that you are processing the world in your own unique way in that center. And so the thing to really kind of notice the difference is, if you have a defined gate in an undefined center, then technically you have inconsistent access to that center. And in some ways, inconsistent access to then that gate that is coming off of that center, right? So with this example of the Ajna center, if you have, gate 17 in your Ajna, but your Ajna is undefined, you're going to have inconsistent access to that quality of the gate of opinions, gate 17. And it's only when you're taking in energy from other people or from the transits or the world around you through your ajna that you get access to gate 17. Now, some people call those gates that are defined hanging gates off an undefined center, they call these qualities dormant, meaning like you don't feel them or they don't show up in your life until they get turned on from taking in energy in that undefined center from the world around you. But I think that that word is kind of misleading, because in our personal experience and in what we've observed from people around us, anytime that you have a defined gate in your chart, since it is a consistent theme in your life, every time you take in other people, you're going to feel gate 17, your gate of opinions. And for most of us, we are taking in the energy of other people every single day. When we go to work, when we walk to the grocery store, there's somebody around us that has a defined ajna that we're picking up. And also there is the cosmic transits, as the sun and all the other planets are currently moving through different gates, they're illuminating things that can illuminate your ajna for you. So many times it's like we feel that dormant, I put in quotes, quality turning on almost every single day. And if it isn't turned on for a couple days because we are completely alone and going on a retreat in the woods, I don't really feel like it's like, oh, suddenly I have no opinions. It's not like you miss it that much. So we really like to say that you can really focus on, if you have these gates defined in your chart, they are a consistent part of who you are. Yes, it's true that you might have, not consistent all the time access to it on a moment to moment, day to day basis, but it's still going to be a theme that is you. And so to kind of dive into that further, what that really looks like, I wanted to read you a quote from Ra Ruhu on undefined centers with having these hanging gates. So I think that he explains it really well. So he says, when you're looking at an open center or an undefined center that has a gate in it, it's already deeply aligned to that center's process, regardless if that is a dormant gate or an active gate. Just one gate. Let's look at my emotional center. I only have one gate activated in my center. It's dormant. It's the 49th gate. It's unconscious. And even though it's the only gate, even though it's in an open center, even though it's an unconscious gate, I have a fixed emotional theme built into me. You turn on my emotional system and I will either accept you or reject you, because that's the wave and that's the energy that's associated with gate 49. Emotions for me have always been framed in that context because it's my only theme. It's how I open up to the emotional wave. I always open up through my 49. always consistent. And if there were other gates and so forth and so on, the moment that you have a gate that's there in any center, it's already a deeply part of the generic. But these centers here, no activations or no themes, none, it means that this is the way in which you take in the other and the way in which it's amplified. You have no predetermined way to deal with it. In other words, if you take in exactly what you're given and amplify it back, you take exactly what you're given and amplify it back. So important. I mean, it's what makes these open centers interesting as a form of wisdom. In other words, my open sacral, totally open, what that means for me in essence is that if anyone defines my sacral, I am only amplifying them. Nothing else, it's them, just them. And of course, in that, if I'm not identified with that, it's an extraordinary learning because it's absolutely objective. You take someone with a totally undefined G, same thing. In other words, when they take in someone else's identity, they take in that identity specifically. That's their gift. They take it in and can see it for what it is. So I know that that was a long-winded quote, but I wanted to read it because it really shows you when you have one single gate in an undefined center, I almost think of it as like your unique filter that you can't take off. You're taking in that person, but filtered through your sunglasses of the 49th gate or, whatever center it is. It's like that filter that from which you take people in. There's always this predisposed part of you that is there when you're taking in that energy and then gets activated.
And I want to emphasize, you're taking in the other person, let's say in that emotional center, and then you are amplifying that energy, right? You have a defined emotional center in that moment in time. And now you're putting out, right? You're amplifying that energy through that 49th gate, through that filter, if you will. So if you have, let's say, a undefined G center and you have gate 7, then when you are taking in somebody's identity and you're taking in their life path and their soul and their purpose, you're amplifying that, you're seeing that person, and then you're able to lead them and guide them towards their better future direction through gate 7. So the defined gates that you have, these still are your gifts. These still are your qualities that you're here to impart upon other people. It's just when you have an undefined center, you are going to be giving oftentimes that gift to other people that you are feeling. It does depend on the center. Like, for example, with the G center, you're feeling their purpose and their path and where they're headed. So now you can be giving that gift that you have with that hanging gate to that person if you want to. But with the emotional center, for example, like in Ra's specific example, he's taking in other people's emotions and then he's either accepting or rejecting them with that gate 49. And it's not necessarily something that he needs to say or do or help them with. It's just the filter that's being applied. Now, Ra, when he was transmitting all of this information, it was way before we had social media. It was way before we had all of the technology around us. And we are constantly being activated all the time. It's part of why we're so overstimulated, is because we are literally picking up other people's energies from the reels that we watch, from the people that we follow, from the shows that we're watching, and the podcasts that we're listening to. We are taking in so much more information right now than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. So just knowing that if something's hanging, it doesn't mean that it's some gift that's unimportant. It's so important. It's going to show you a big part of how you are here to impact the world, how you're here to guide other people, how you're here to be a way shower, like a defined center is. You are way showing in those defined gates, even though it's coming off of an undefined center. And it's not really helpful to be like, okay, let me look at every transit and know exactly when I'm going to be defined in these centers and use these gifts, because like Dana said, you can be activated but just by going to the store or literally just by opening your phone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really more important to understand, okay, what are my gifts? And when it comes to deconditioning and feeling empowered, you can look at what are my gifts in each planet. Because when you look at the planets on the sides of your chart, it's not, it doesn't care if it's a defined center or an undefined center. It's just
Mhm.
showing you you have gate 7 as your Earth gate, or you have gate 14 as your Venus gate. And that's such helpful information to understand. But then you can look and see, oh, okay, I have gate 14 coming off of my undefined sacral. So I'm really lending this gift when I'm around other people, when I'm being activated by other people. And I can really lend this gift towards other people if that might feel most natural for me.
Yeah, and just to give you some more examples, because I think it's really helpful, my conscious sun gate, my personality sun gate, which is perhaps the most prevalent and important gate in your entire chart, mine is gate 29, which is coming off of my undefined sacral, which means it's a hanging gate coming from my undefined sacral as my most important gift. And a lot of the things that you read online, specifically from Raw, that's like really, harsh, meant to be shocking and grabbing languaging, will be like, if your sun gate is coming from an undefined center, then your most important quality that you're here to share for the world is imprisoned. It's locked within you, and you're going to be desperate to unleash it. And you're going to be seeking other people that help you unleash it. And you're always going to feel disempowered because your main quality in life is imprisoned within you. And, on some level, that is true. Like, it's not true. But for me, for example, with having gate 29 as my sun gate, before even knowing human design, before I ever knew my strategy and authority, before I knew I was a projector, I was drawn to Shayna, for example, that has a gate 2, that connects with my gate 14, another gate in my chart, which illuminates my sacral. And it is sort of like a fake role, right? Because neither of us actually have a defined sacral, but her gate and my gate together illuminates my sacral. And then when I'm around her, I have access to my gate 29, the gate of saying yes, the gate of deeply committing to life and making correct commitments to things. And so without even trying, without even knowing, I had this best friend that I was then roommates with, that constantly this energy was activated within me. Another example with my husband, before I knew my strategy and authority, before I knew I was a projector, being drawn to him and choosing to be in partnership with him, he has a defined sacral. So every night I sleep next to a defined sacral, and I wake up in the morning with his sacral energy unleashing my gate 29. And I can write off that even when he leaves for a few hours. And none of that was intentional. I wasn't desperately clinging on to trying to find someone to complete me in any way. It happened naturally. And so almost all the time, I have this gate 29 activated from these two people in my life that I see quite often. But when I am completely alone and I'm clearing out, it's not like I'm missing that gate 29 energy. I will say that I do not have a defined sacral. So I don't have that consistent access to that sacral energy that drives my commitments all the time. I also have an undefined ego center, right? So there's a lot of places in my chart where just being a projector, since I don't have that defined sacral, I already have inconsistent energy to working on things and committing things, that sacral energy with my gate 29. But it's not a problem for me. I don't feel like I'm imprisoned with my energy. I feel like I'm a projector. I don't have the sacral, but I still have gate 29 as my most prevalent quality in my life. So I wanted to kind of give that example to show you from my own personal experience that quality is so felt in me. It is the number one thing I share. I have naturally chosen to be around people with my own inner authority without even knowing human design that unlock that within me. But it is true that I don't have that consistent sacral access to follow through on those commitments all the time. Or if I say yes to something that is incorrect with my strategy and authority with my gate 29, I can really put myself into a tailspin. So all of those things are true at the same time, but it's not I don't feel like my main sun gate is imprisoned, because the way that energy flows, we're always going to be drawn to what we need and what's right for us when you're following our strategy and authority. And if you have an example like this where your main sun gate is coming from an undefined center, but maybe your business partner or your romantic partner don't illuminate that center, if you followed your strategy and authority and you have been continuing to do that, you can trust that you don't need access to that gate when you don't have it. and that when you will have access to it is when you're meant to use it, right? It's kind of like trusting this higher flow that we have everything that we need. And depending on your undefined centers, that's really going to make your design, right? It's our centers, our gates, and then our centers and the way they connect that makes our energy type. So, a lot of the lessons that you're going to learn from being, let's say, a manifester will have to do with not having a defined sacral, anyways. A lot of the lessons that you learn from being a projector will have to do with not having a defined sacral, anyways. So, it's really not as big of like a scary issue as it might seem like when you're reading things online about it.
Yeah. And, another example with my chart, I have an undefined root center, but I have six defined gates out of the nine defined. So they're reaching and trying to do and get things done and take action, but they're not going anywhere necessarily. So it's important to be very aware of the not self of that center, because of any center that you have undefined with defined gates, because you can get tripped up in the not self, especially with the undefined root. We see this really frequently, where you are overexhausting yourself, where you're not cutting yourself off, where you're trying to do too much, and you are living in this not self theme of that center because you have so much activation there with those defined gates that feel like you can almost access it, so you have to keep going, and then you bump into someone and then you are accessing it, but then maybe they've left and now you're running on fumes. So it's all about awareness, to learn, first of all, what are the not self themes of my undefined centers, and kind of checking yourself before you wreck yourself with that. And then understanding, okay, what are these gifts that I have here? I am extremely capable. I get so much stuff done. I handle shit. And that's a big part of what I'm here to do with the gifts that I have. But knowing that that's not what um makes me valuable, knowing that that's not what is consistent for me, knowing that I don't need to show up in that way every single day in every single instance of my life, but checking, oh, now I'm in my not self. I was feeling really empowered and really good with this, and it feels great to use that, but now I'm on fumes, and I can set that down for a bit. And it doesn't mean that now I don't have those defined gates. It just means that I'm honoring their natural energy flow versus trying to force them upon the world, upon myself, upon others, because that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that's one of the biggest tips in general. If you have a hanging gate from undefined center, is be really aware of the not self theme of that center, because there can be sort of like an extra ease to being in that not self with that center. And also with the lowest expression of that gate. Like, for example, I have gate 51 illuminated in my undefined ego center. So, gate 51 is the gate of shock. And in the highest expression, it's about doing things that are astonishing, that initiate other people, that awaken people to higher levels of consciousness. But on the lowest expression, gate 51 can be about like needing to be first and creating shock in a way that is not healthy or good for you or good for other people. So with my undefined ego center, the not self theme of that undefined ego center is feeling like I need to prove myself, feeling like I need to force my willpower or force my motivation to be consistent so that I can prove my value, I can prove my worth. And then with the lowest expression of gate 51, I feel like I need to prove that I can go first and I can be the best. And I have this like competitive drive and need to prove myself that's coming from not self and a lack of self-worth. So being aware of all of those things is really important for me, since I have this defined gate in this undefined center. And that awareness is something that really can set you free. And knowing that you are not meant to have that definition in that center, practicing that will actually help you come into the highest expression of whatever that hanging gate is. For me, gate 51 on that undefined center. So be really aware of the lowest expression of both the gate and the undefined center. That's going to be so helpful for you. The next tip I wanted to say, be extra aware of the defined gates that you have on your undefined emotional center or your undefined solar plexus center. If you're looking at your body graph, that is the very rightmost triangle on kind of like that bottom right-hand corner. And if that center is white, but you have gates that are there, make sure you know what those gates are. and look into which one of the emotional waves that gate would fall within. A great resource for looking into this more is actually our membership, Your Human Design Besties, because we talk about transits a lot in Besties, looking at the way that the sun and the other planets are illuminating different gates. If you have any gates in your undefined emotional center, like Shayna, for example, I think you only have gate 22 that's
Mhm.
illuminated. So she just has one gate in her emotional, undefined emotional solar plexus. That's not a lot. But that one gate, whenever she's around someone with gate 12, or whenever any of the planets are illuminated in gate 12, then she's going to have that create the false sense of an emotional wave in her life. Right. So it's really important to be aware of that. And also, she has gates coming from her root that are wanting to reach up to her emotional center, that her husband then has those gates on the emotional center. So just being aware that even though if you have an undefined solar plexus, you do not have an emotional wave consistently in your life, you can still experience like a fake emotional wave sometimes if you have any of those gates that are defined on your undefined solar plexus, or any of the gates from the other center that are wanting to reach to that. And then you're around someone else who has those gates.
Yeah, and hearing all of this, it's like, okay, so why does this even matter if we can all feel the same things that we all feel all the time? Like sometimes I do have an emotional wave that's a random emotion, and sometimes I don't. And but even though I'm not an emotionally defined person, like if we're all feeling each other and we're all everything all the time, like why does this even matter? And it's these subtle differences that you start to notice as you build your awareness that set you free. Like me noticing, oh, nothing happened to me today, and I'm suddenly just in a bad mood. I know that it's either someone I felt, something that activated my emotional wave, like my potential for an emotional wave, or like it's literally the transits that are happening that are activating that within me. So I can choose to then set it down, come back to neutral because I know what is consistent for me, what is my baseline, what is my design is feeling emotionally neutral all the time. And so with my husband and how we create an emotional wave, we create actually two emotional waves. we I'll notice, oh, he's in a bad mood and I'm not. And then an hour later, I'm in a bad mood and he's not. And we're now ping-ponging these emotions back and forth because we both have an undefined emotional center, but we create this emotional wave together. So observing that pattern and then just taking 20 minutes, 15 minutes to go be by ourselves, we will both come back to neutral, which is our baseline. Whereas if somebody had a defined emotional center, they are having their own emotional experience, regardless of the people that they're around, regardless of the transits, regardless of the things that they're watching. And just going to be alone for 15 minutes from other people isn't going to then just like poof, magic wand away their emotional experience that they're having. Whereas it does for me. So having this awareness, it really is so helpful because you feel like your life and your life experience is happening with you versus something that just feels confusing or like you're swimming upstream or you don't know which tools and resources to lean into to help you really come into your alignment. Because bottom line is we all have we all have the tools and the resources and the geometry that we need to live our life purpose, to have all of the resources that we're meant to have to achieve all of the goals that we and desires that we are meant to have. We all have every single piece that we need in our design to live the life that we're meant to live and live our dreams. So, understanding that you don't need to be like someone else to achieve greatness or to achieve success or to achieve love or connection or belonging. You have all of those exact keys, these gifts within you that are magnetically pulling you towards the right people, the right place, the right time, the right resources. And it's up to us to get out of the way and attune to our awareness of what's alignment and what's not. And that's all a frequency thing. And it happens the easiest through understanding our strategy and authority. So that would be the last tip is follow your strategy and authority and trust that the close people in your life will have the definition that's meant for you. This practice or this experiment of human design really is all about self-trust. and trusting life, trusting that you have everything that you need to do all of the things that you're wanting to do. Human design isn't going to tell you that you want to live in Italy. Human design isn't going to tell you that you want to build a business or that you want to raise a family. It's not going to tell you what you're going to want or what you desire. Those are things that came in with you on a soul level that you chose karmically, that you have soul contracts with. But human design is going to tell you, okay, you want these things. Here's how you go about magnetically coming to them with the least resistance, because you want them for a reason. You are meant to have those things. You want success for a reason because you are meant to have that. You want abundance for a reason because you are meant to live an abundant life. It's just the way that you get there is going to be completely different than the way that I get there. And it's not about looking at each other's journeys and comparing them. It's about attuning to yourself, sensing what is alignment, what's not, and then being empowered to move forward in a way that is you versus in a way that is someone else, and trusting that everyone else around you is literally unlocks all the keys that you need to kind of propel you down your path, as long as you are tuning in moment by moment with presence of what's alignment, what's not, what's me, what's not, and how can I honor myself and my own frequency, because that's going to get me where I'm meant to go. And in doing so, you then are being a way shower for other people to do so for themselves as well. When one person is in alignment, it creates a ripple effect for other people to be in alignment. When you are out of alignment, it creates a ripple effect for other people to be out of alignment. So it's the
True.
biggest gift that you can do for not just for yourself, but for other people, is to tune in to your own alignment. And human design gives you that specific languaging and awareness about what that is for you. And as you can see from this episode, it gets really freaking specific, right? Like you can get onto every single gate. And it's not that you have to learn about every single gate that you have coming off of an undefined center, or every single gate that you have in general, although that can be really empowering. If you just learned your strategy and authority and really committed to using that every single day, then all of the other stuff would fall into place without you even having awareness of it. But that can be really challenging for people. And you can come across roadblocks where you're like, I'm using my strategy and authority, but I feel this so strongly. And it's like, oh, because you have these gates and these placements, and this is a roadblock for you, and you can overcome it in this way, right? There's so much that we can get into. But the biggest tip, no matter what, we're always going to share, is understand your strategy and authority and use it.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, preach, Shayna. Everything you just said, aho, I love it. Like, it's so true. And with your strategy and authority, with human design, it's really interesting. I feel like human design can almost be broken up into two sections. One is your strategy and authority, which is your navigation system, which is an art form. It's an intuitive art form to be lived, right? To be experimented with. The other side of human design is all of the data and the specifics of the mechanics and the mathematic measurements. And that part of human design is absolutely fascinating. And it's so cool that those two sides are both there within human design. Honestly, it's what I think is the most amazing thing about the system, is the fact that it is both. And I feel like we can look at a lot of things like that. Like when I talk about music, music is the same. On one hand, music is an intuitive art form to be lived, to be felt, to be channeled. On the other hand, music is mathematics. It is literally measurements and the relationship between sounds, right? So a lot of things in life are like that. And when we look at human design in these deeper layers, like this episode was for our human design nerds, which we said in the beginning, like we go deep in this. So if you're new to human design, you're listening to this and your head spinning, it's okay. We know that this was a bit deeper, but if you're following and you're here at this end, then you're someone who's really drawn to the more mathematic and data and science side of human design, which is amazing. But just be aware that this is not a tool that our mind can use to manipulate our life and avoid the things that we're meant to experience, right? This is not a tool for mental control and manipulation. This is a tool to help us surrender. Through our surrender to who we are, we find our empowerment. And that's a polarization that I feel like a lot of people are uncomfortable with. Being empowered will need surrender. to who you are. That's the thing about human design. You can never change your design. You can never change it. Right. And if you're using this system as a tool to try to do that, you're using it incorrectly and you're going to be putting yourself out of alignment and you're going to be missing the things that are meant for you. Instead, human design is really here to help empower you, to give you the awareness around how to surrender, what you're surrendering to, and also how you feel empowered in that navigation side and that art form side, the how you move to that direction, like Shayna was saying before. So I really loved this episode. I'm excited to share this. We get a lot of questions around this. So we're happy to be able to give this information and we're excited to hear how it sits for you. And if you've made it to the end of this episode and you are one of our human design nerds, we'd love to hear which hanging gates you have in your chart. If you have any hanging gates in undefined centers that are in really important placements, like your sun gates or your north node gates or your moon gates, anything like that, we'd love to hear from you on our Instagram at DayLuna. And if you're feeling really passionate about human design, you want to learn all of the details and everything there is to know, make sure you check out our human design reader training, which you can find on our website, daylunalife.com. That is where we really get to dive into all of the different layers of your definition and your centers and all of the gates and the meanings of the gates and our interpretation of the highest expression and the lowest expression of every single gate and how you go on that journey of actually transmuting that energy and making those shifts and alchemizing our lowest expression into our highest expression. So if you're feeling that call, check out our human design reader training. And thank you so much for being here today. We're so excited to share this with you. We hope you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to follow along and learn more about human design.